The distant, but all the same vile smell of vomit, sweat, stale urine and faeces wafting over the port concerned would let its citizens know that a slave ship had arrived. These chilling words were spoken about the slave trade. Only 2 centuries ago, men, women and children from Africa used to be packed like sardines as cargo below decks in sailing ships, without sanitation or proper food or water for prolonged voyages at sea, before being sold to foreign masters as slaves. The conditions were so terrible that many died before reaching port. In rather different circumstances today, this square-rigged sailing ship, replicating a 19th century slave ship, arrived at Greenwich Pier before making a commemorative journey up the Thames to the Pool of London. On Thursday the 29th of March, renamed the Zong, she became a floating exhibition to mark the 200th anniversary of the abolition of the slave trade from British ports. On board, a choir were rehearsing hymns and songs ready for the trip. The media were on board too, filming the action. Below decks, the finishing touches were being added to the exhibition about the horrors of slavery, even as the ship left Greenwich Pier to start her trip upriver to rendezvous with her naval escort. The Zong is a notorious name in a terrible chapter of British colonial history. That ship was at the centre of an infamous court case in 1783, after 133 slaves were thrown overboard as part of an insurance scam.
What happened on the Zong happened thousands upon thousands of times, because generally when the ships approached their destination, they threw the slaves that were sick, they threw them overboard, and they obviously threw overboard the dead ones because they wanted to get a good price on the slave market when they sold flesh, as it was called.
This awful trade in human flesh brought guilt and shame on a nation more than 2 centuries ago. By contrast, it was uplifting to hear on deck men and women, black and white together, singing hymns and songs of freedom, rejoicing that many were indeed free at last.
And can it be? There's something about the hymn that spoke to me, the words themselves, and particularly it says, my chains fell off, my heart was free, I rose, went up and followed thee. And it's just that release, and it quite fits in with the theme, free at last. As a Christian, free from sin, free from everything, but just that great period of freedom, being set free.
I think it's terribly important that we do understand what happened 200 years ago and before that, and our involvement in the slave trade. I think it's a bit like the Holocaust. I think everybody needs to know why we're such a wealthy country today. So much is built on the past and the work of the slaves, and I've become much more aware of what really happened in those days than I was before, and it's been great to be involved in this day and in some of the other events that are taking place this week.
Then the moment arrived when HMS Northumberland came alongside, complete with helicopter hovering above the waters. The might of the Royal Navy had come to bring us safely into port. As we moved upriver with our escort, the sheer scale of this occasion was apparent. The presence of Her Majesty's warship reminded us that the Navy also played a significant part in enforcing the abolition of the gruesome trade in human cargo 200 years ago. As we approached Tower Bridge, it began to open ahead of us. HMS Northumberland led us through. We followed on as the gospel choir sang Amazing Grace.
Our precious dear, and grace and dear, the hour I first believed. Many angels, toils and snares, I have already come. His grace hath brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me.
As we passed under the bridge and entered the Pool of London, we'd safely reached our journey's end. It was a moving experience for all of us. And we would soon be free to go ashore, unlike those who were once enslaved.
I just feel overwhelmed at what this symbolises, this whole ship. You know, we would have been carrying 300 people down below, and I think whilst it feels exciting to come through Tower Bridge, exciting to see the Navy and the choir, actually it's the reality of what we're commemorating and the horror of what we're commemorating that I feel quite moved by today, and just privileged really that we could be here.
Northumberland docked alongside HMS Belfast, while the Zong anchored off Tower Pier. Shortly after arrival, she was officially welcomed into the port by the Mayor of London, Ken Livingstone, and opened to the public. She'll be part of a larger exhibition about slavery and its abolition until the 9th of April.
Right, here we go.
The exhibition's in three parts. There's a part at All Hallows by the Tower of an introduction, just an introduction to the whole slave journey, and then they come down here and go down in the hold, and there's three sections there of the life on the plantations, the capture, the middle passage, and then the selling of the slaves when they actually land. And then you go back to the hall, to All Hallows, and there's a hall laid out there with again another three sections, one of which is looking at the abolitionists, and then there'll be one looking at modern slavery and one looking at the legacy of slavery.
The responsibility for the future and how the legacy is dealt with sits on the shoulders of all of us.
But as we all prepared to leave the ship, we were reminded too that human trafficking still takes place in the 21st century.
At least 27 million men, women and children stuck in slavery today, and I think an occasion like this, which reminds us the horrors of past slavery, should, I think, challenge us to deal with the challenges of slavery in our day and fulfil our responsibility as William Wilberforce did his in his day.